This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland State Library Agency. The MSLA podcast features presenters from statewide youth programs, as well as learning opportunities for library staff and resources for patrons of the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another LBPD guest hour. I'm so excited because I'm bringing in someone absolutely special today to talk to us in regards to Mental Health Awareness Month and one of my favorite websites that I can't wait to share with everyone. I'm so excited because we are bringing in Marianne Baynton, and she is the workplace relations specialist. And let me just tell you, her bio is going to make you go, yes! So she supports employers, governments, organizations, unions, teams, associations that want to resolve issues involving mental health, psychological safety, conflict, and performance concerns in the workplace. She's known as the godmother of psychological health and safety, and she served as the co-chair of the technical committee at the National Standard of Canada's on psychological health and safety in the workplace, and was a member of the Mental Health Commission of Canada's Workforce Advisory Committee, and is a member of the Employment Standards Committee for the AODA. Now, she has written several books, one of which is available on her website, The Evolution of Workplace Mental Health in Canada. And she is also the Director of Strategy and Collaboration for Canada Life's Workplace Strategies for Mental Health, which is one of my favorite websites. It provides free and practical ideas, tools, and resources to help with the prevention, intervention, and management of workplace mental health issues. Now, I'm very fortunate because, I work at the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, and we are very, very much an awesome place to be. So I'm going to bring in Marianne now and let her talk about herself for a minute. Hi, Marianne.
Hey, Ashley, thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased that we have spent a lot of time to make sure that our content is accessible, that for those who need it, that they're able to access it.
It is, and it's accessible to screen readers, which is even better,
Mhm.
so I'm all for it.
Well, that's a process of continual improvement, though. As the screen readers improve, we update to make it even better.
That's so cool, 'cause, not a lot of websites do that. Well, I read your bio, but tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Scottish Italian newfie that has always been interested in why people say and do what they say and do. And as I grew, I started to understand that it's not just biology, that that's the way you are, but that it actually is how we interact with other people, how we interact with the world, but primarily how our mind works. And as I learned more through schooling and education and life, I realized that work has a huge impact on all of that. And that the irony of it all is that when we are in a psychologically healthy and safe workplace, we are more focused, more energized, we do better work, we can do more work, and it's a win-win for both employers and for the employees. So I've become very passionate about improving working lives for the benefit of everyone.
So cool, like, so awesome, and, like I said, I've referenced your, workplace strategies for mental health and talks I've given about anxiety and leadership and things like that, and you're right, life experience kinda folds right on into that. Well, I'm gonna ask you the hard question now. So what is mental health?
To me, mental health is really the quality of my experience in being alive at any moment of time. Now, mental illness is a diagnosis, but even people who have a diagnosis, depression, anxiety related disorders, bipolar, are managing their mental health from a moment to moment basis. All of us are. And I think sometimes we get confused between mental health and mental illness. And yet we don't get confused between physical health and physical illness. We see the differences there. But just like in that example, everybody manages their physical health on a moment to moment basis. And I think optimizing our mental health, regardless if you have a mental illness, is what determines a lot of our quality of life.
So, what is the most important thing about mental health awareness, especially in the workplace?
Well, and this is my personal opinion from my personal experience because Ashley, I grew up as a child who was very anxious, someone who ruminated a lot, worried about did I say or do the right thing? Were people judging me? And afraid to try things. When I started to understand that I have a lot more control over my mind than I ever believed I did, when I started to meet people with conditions like bipolar or schizophrenia who were able to manage their minds, I realized that there is so much unclaimed power and control that we have that it became almost an experiment for me to decide that I will always have some level of anxiety. I just don't need to allow it to manage my behaviors or my mood. And it started to change everything for me. And so I really think that there's this opportunity for everyone to do the same.
Was that something that was hard to do?
When you say hard to do, losing people is hard to do. Natural childbirth was hard to do. Quitting smoking was hard to do. This has just been a journey. And it doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be consistent. And you have to be hopeful about it. You have to believe that you can do it. Matthew Dixon is a man who, at the age of 22, experienced schizophrenia. And he said it was like living in a nightmare where he said it was like you were feeling like you were drowning in the middle of an ocean surrounded by sharks. Your thoughts were so invasive that it was so relentless. And yet he said that every day he would try to learn more about the condition, learn more about how to manage it. And by the age of 40 something, he was able to live a great life. He's been contributing all across the country to other people. I also met a woman with also with a condition where she had heard voices, and she was the executive director of an agency. And at that time, I was pretty ignorant to all this stuff. And I said, excuse me, you tell me that you hear voices and you're doing this job? And she said, yes. And she said, I hear the voices, but I choose whether or not I pay attention to them. I choose whether or not I allow them to impact me. She said, I sometimes even bargain with them and say, look, if you just stay put for a while, I need to finish this and then I'll pay attention to you. And the strength, the power, the control that these two people have over their minds when they have an organic condition that they can't get rid of really opened my eyes to what could we do when we don't have that, when our anxiety is just a thought that may or may not be true, that may or may not ever happen. If they can do it, what can we do?
I'm a little speechless because that's a very powerful story. Yeah, that that one got me like right at the heart. Um,
It did me too, Ashley, and that's the thing is that I was profoundly changed by my privilege of meeting and talking to these 2 people.
I kind of want to read their story now. Like I encourage everyone in the communities that we serve, the print disabled communities, to write their story down, because I think everybody's lived this interesting life, you know, got to do some things that I've never got to do. So now I want to read their story, and I'm a big biography buff. So how does mental health, both positive and negative, affect us physically?
Well, and that's the thing. The body and mind are one system. It's not like the brain is disconnected from everything else. And so people with depression talk about, their skin feeling itchy, or they'll talk about the physical pain that they have in different places. People with anxiety, their heart does actually beat faster. They're not making that up. It actually is measured, and you can see that it's beating faster simply because of a thought that they're having. And so we need to look at the different approaches that we can have to stress, to anxiety, that include movement, that include things like grounding, which is just, what do I smell? What do I feel? What do I hear? Because you're bringing yourself back into the present moment. You can focus, and people who work in pain understand that if you focus on the pain rather than trying to avoid it or getting angry at it, and just say, yes, I hear the message that there's something painful. And, some will say surround that pain with light and love, or add to the pain some calm energy. And people can actually live with pain much more comfortably by applying the mind to the physical feeling. And so I think there's lots of opportunity for us to deal with what we would consider stress or mental health issues physically as well as socially, meaning that we do activities that take us out of our mind. Now, not that you want to be out of your mind, but for me, something like live music, where I can see the musicians, where I can see the singer, really takes me out of my mind, because I want to be there present for them, and I can enjoy that. Different than if I was listening to the radio, different than if I was listening to, streamed music. For some people, it's gardening or being in nature. For other people, it's art. It doesn't really matter, but we need to find what it is for us that allows us to be in the present moment and not focused on repetitive negative thoughts, not focused on pain. And it doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with those things. Of course we do. You lose somebody and you need to grieve that. It's normal. But then you need to integrate that loss, and you need to figure out how you're going to do that. How are you going to honor that you ever had that person in your life? How are you going to be grateful and express that gratitude for what they contributed? Even if what they contributed is teaching you never to do what they did. But it is the ability to say, I was gifted with this person in my life. They're not here now. How can I live the rest of my life to honor that legacy? So, yeah, that's a big, long, rambling answer, actually, but there's so much that we can do, and it's important that everybody realize that if they can strive to find what works for them, they will improve the quality of their life.
Well, and I think that goes to the point that you brought up earlier, that mental health and mental illness are two separate things. and they're often conflated with each other. It sounds to me, as someone who does promote positive mental health changes, that how we feel physically can have such a powerful effect on our mental health, both positively and negatively. And that's, that's really important to hear.
Mhm. So it's interesting because it's circular, right? When you are in physical pain, when you are in emotional pain, your mental health is naturally going to suffer. When your mental health is very good, you're resilient, you're able to enjoy life, you're able to be grateful, then the physical pain, evidence shows, is reduced. The emotional pain is reduced. And so, yes, it's all connected.
Well, we're coming into May, and I know we're recording this a little early, but May is coming up, and May is one of a special month because it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm curious, getting into the thing that you love the most, how does mental health awareness play into work and the workplace?
And this is the reason why I call myself a workplace relations specialist. The impact that we have on each other at work can be significant. And my belief is that we're adults. We don't need to be victim to the workplace or to the people in the workplace and think, well, it's just stressful and that's the way it is. Or, I just have to put up with this. Actually, we really don't. And as a group of adults, and I say this because I've done this before, if you asked a group of adults in a very dysfunctional, conflict ridden, pressure cooker type team, what they want. What kind of team do you want? What kind of experience do you want? How do you want people to treat you on a bad day? How do you want to feel that you're part of the team? Almost every person will have a similar answer. And the answer is, I want to feel that I matter. I want to feel like what I contribute matters. I want to be able to do my best work and not feel that I have to look over my shoulder. And the interesting thing about this is that quite often in these really difficult team situations, all of the team members believe that the only reason they have not been behaving as if other people matter and their contributions matter is because somebody else started it. So when we do investigations to determine who was right and who was wrong, we actually cement people in the victim mode because we're asking them to justify and defend themselves. We're asking them to share their victim story over and over again. And instead of doing that, asking people, what kind of work team experience do you want? What are you willing to contribute to have that kind of experience? And if you're having a bad day, how do you want people to respectfully remind you? This process, and again, it's written up on the website as well, Ashley. It's called the team agreement process. This process almost seems magical because from the moment we gather the information from each of the team members confidentially and privately, and then bring them together to read it, everybody believes that that's what they asked for because we all want the same thing. And because nobody's been blamed or shamed, there's not the need to justify or defend. And because everybody's agreeing, nobody wants to be the first person to mess this up. Right? And so that accountability, that commitment is so much stronger when we treat people like they're adults who can choose the experience that they want, who can choose how they'll interact, than when we treat them like children who need to be disciplined.
Wow. Again, that is awesome. When I think of a workplace and I think of pressure cooker, I'm thinking like Wall Street, I'm thinking high-end law firms that you see on TV, but in actuality, it could be anything and any team. Bringing your team together and saying, "Hey, what do you want?" seems so basic, so simple to do, but it's not, is it?
Well, in fact, it kind of is. And that's one of the things over the years, Ashley, that I've come to understand that universal truths are pretty basic. They're pretty simple. And that it may take a bit of time and effort. When I'm saying time or effort, a couple of days to do all the interviews to create it. But in one particular case where there were 80 people involved, like that's a huge group, which is no wonder it was not functional. They didn't have enough management. But, anyways, in this one team, what the feedback was, the attitudes and the behaviors changed in the moment that they heard the agreement before they even left the room. And it was because of that safety and confidence that we've all agreed we're all doing this. We'll do it now. So, is it difficult? I don't think so. I think, as someone who does the interviews, the person who does the interviews must have a high level of emotional and social intelligence, right? To make people feel safe, to be able to look for the themes and patterns, to be able to make the agreement in the language of the actual team rather than imposing something on them, to really make them know it was what they wanted, their commitment. But it's really not that challenging.
So, how did you get involved with the website Workplace Strategies for Mental Health?
Yeah, that's another interesting. I was with the Canadian Mental Health Association, creating training for leaders who had employees who have mental illnesses. And as that, in that role, I was also on the Business and Economic Roundtable on Mental Health and Addictions as their workplace relations advisor. And I was approached by this insurance company guy who said, "We want to start up something to address this," because at the roundtable, the people who were sitting around talking about it were challenged. Put your money where your mouth is. Like, actually do something. Don't just sit here and talk about it. Because it was mostly CEOs and high level executives. And so this one insurance company decided they did want to do something, and they were recommended to me. Well, Ashley, my first thought was, I don't want to work for an insurance company. Like, I'm a mental health advocate. I'm a social worker by training and a mental health advocate. I don't want to work for an insurance company doing something to sell policies. But that was 16 years ago. That company does everything for the public good. Everything on that website, they pay to create it, to make sure that it's evidence-based, to pilot it, to use continual improvement. And they have had this commitment. It'll be 16 years now. And I question their integrity to start with. And it's been nothing but a gift to me that I get to work with people from across the country, but often from around the world too, to create evidence-based resources that are free to anyone. And I love what we've been able to do. I love what we continue to do. And the company, Canada Life, has asked nothing except do what will serve the greater good.
That actually brings me to my next question. Are the resources really free? Because I have used the website to do research for my talks, and my boss and I actually gave a talk this past May on psychologically safe leadership. And the workplace strategies for mental health really played a heavy hand in helping us develop that, along with other Canadian resources, which is really cool. So I've how tell us more about the website being really free. Like it's not there's not a gotcha anywhere that
No.
I found.
And that's actually been one of the few challenges that I've really had, is because an insurance company provides all of the funding. People believe, well, you have to be a client, or they're going to call you, or they're gathering the information so they can sell to you. And none of that is true. None of it is true. And the whole purpose from their perspective is they give money to all sorts of things, right? To children's charity, to healthcare, to some of the arts, to vulnerable populations. They give all the time. It's sort of their commitment to the greater good. But when they looked at what can we give in this space of workplace mental health, they couldn't find any place to give money, to give support. And so they decided that they would do it themselves. And so I'm still not an employee. 16 years I've worked with them. I'm an independent consultant. I do all of my own things as well. But for 16 years, they've consistently supported, funded whatever we feel that the could serve employees, employers, people who work. So yes, it's really free. There's even a red bar right across the top of the website that says, yes, these resources are really free. No salesperson will contact you. You don't even have to put your name in if you don't want to. Like, you can create a profile, but that's just so that you get a little bit more value add, not because we're going to contact you about insurance, but because you get to be the first to know about things. So that part is absolute. It's free. We want you to say where you got it from, but some people even take our resources and white label them, use them for their own purposes. But say this was adapted from or came from Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. That's all they want. They want to make a difference. And they need people like you, Ashley, to take the resources and bring them to people, because not everybody's going to go to the website and find them.
Well, and what's part of the reason I asked you to come and do this podcast is because we have such the print disabled community is such a wide community. I mean, it covers individuals who are blind, who have low vision, people like myself who are dyslexic, individuals who've had traumatic brain injury, and they all work, in some capacity. Some are retired, some work part time, some work full time. It's a wide walk of life. I want them to know where this website is and that the resources are really free. So you have my thanks, of course. And I will give a caveat. If you want to make a profile to this website, you do have to be Canadian.
Well, we're hoping that's going to be expanded too. It's just the international laws for privacy and what has to happen to the
Yeah.
website. But the you can still get all of the resources for free.
Oh, yes, you can. And you get this wonderful weekly email. It's great. There's a weekly email that comes that gives you a tip or a story or something neat that you never thought of. I think my last one was on burnout
Yeah.
and workplace burnout. And so, that's absolutely free. A free newsletter on mental health awareness. It's great.
Yeah, some organizations, so there's 3 different subscriptions, 4, I guess, if you count the newsletter, but the 3 different subscriptions, some employers, they subscribe and then they turn around and send it to their staff with their own comments. And some of them will send it and then invite a conversation about it at the next team meeting. So there's lots of ways. But the three of them, the one you mentioned is mental health awareness. There's also a work-life balance tips
Mhm.
subscription and one for leaders. So called Psychologically Safe Leader. And you can get tips on a regular basis about how to do that better. Because most of us don't have more than a few minutes to get that information. So it's that easy, quick, and regular. Yeah.
All right. So my final question is probably a doozy, but if people walk away with one thing from today's podcast, what should it be?
That they have more power and control over their mind, over their mental health, regardless of their condition, regardless of their diagnosis. They have way more power and control than they might think, and that they should cultivate that power and control for the rest of their lives in order to support the quality of life they want.
Awesome. Awesome. And that takes us right back to the beginning of the podcast. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in yet again. Until next month, we'll see you soon.
This has been a presentation of the Maryland State Library Agency. For links to additional resources provided by today's presenter, please visit the show notes. For more information on MSLA or the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, visit marylandlibraries.org.